Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where we talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Supernatural, the latest episode of Legacies, as well as the latest episode of Evil. Like always, if I'm talking about something that you want to listen to, you can always look in the description down below. I include a time to start talking about each of the respective shows. So, for example, if you don't want to hear what I had to say about this week's episode of Supernatural, you can skip to what I had to say about this week's episode of Legacies and or skip to what I had to say about this week's episode of Evil. But the first thing I want to talk about is this week's episode of Supernatural, a great episode. I got giddy because there's so many familiar faces that pop up in this episode. Obviously, we're still dealing with the ghost dilemma. Turns out, in fact, one of said ghosts turns out to be Jack the Ripper, showing you it's not just your average day evil spirits. We're talking like the baddest of baddest have come out of hell, because hell's got quite a few people who are just not there just being evil. They're like the pure mega evil people, like Jack the Ripper, for example. First off, we have Catch showing up, and then we've got Rowena. God, I feel so bad that I was blanking on her name for a second, which I feel so bad because I love Rowena. I got so giddy when she popped up. I was like, dude, I know from now on, anytime I see Ruth Connell in anything, I'm going to get giddy just because I love her so much as Rowena. Which just makes her whole situation, potentially how her story's going to end up playing out, how it's supposed to play out, just even that much more tragic, because I love that character so much. It's just like, she's so fiery and she's so good. I love it because she's one of those characters that went from villain to a good guy, and I love the transition. Also, I love the fact is that Rowena and Catch, they literally were like, yo, so like they're both asking Dean about the other one, and he's kind of like, what? Why am I in the middle playing matchmaker between you two? And that moment, like when they're making the spell and everything, and just like their innuendos and stuff, like things getting sexy and steamy, it's like, oh my God, this is happening. This is so good. I don't know what it is, but just the immediate attraction to each other, which is also gotta be weird because it's like, well, let's not forget he had a thing for their mom. Now on top of that, now it's Rowena. It's a little bit weird and awkward, but still I love it. That flirtation is so amazing. The sad thing is there's all these different people from the town who are, starting to get restless because people are going back in for different reasons. That mom at the beginning, I'm like, why are you going back? Don't go back. And it's like she's getting like some medicine for her daughter. So I was like, you got a reason to. But at the same time, I'm like, I wish you didn't do that, because you get disemboweled by one and only blinking on Jack the Ripper. So but and it's not just them, it's like other people start going too. And obviously it's that complicated thing of like, because Cassio is like, we got to let people know what's up. But it's like, no, people are literally hanging on by a thread, and we let them know that there's murders happening now too. That's going to cause a problem. That's something that got brought up last season by Adam Beach's character in an episode where it's like, letting people know about the supernatural. But it's like I said, and it's a thought I've had, like going into this season, going forward, there's no more boundary. Everyone's going to know that the supernatural exists, so people are always going to be on guard. Like I've talked about it before, you can definitely see the good side and the bad side to that, because people will start being like, oh, there's something supernatural here, when it's like, no, that not. And that's also, it's something that the Winchesters, they struggle with it. Obviously, the whole thing of like, sometimes the supernatural can be good. Obviously, people, they care about our supernatural. Garth being a werewolf, Rowena being a witch who was evil at one point in time, but is actually good now. It's actually kind of interesting because it turns out her and Jack the Ripper know each other, because I kind of forgot, like, right, Rowena's like centuries old. Isn't she like 300 years old? So it's like, of course you're going to know Jack the Ripper, which is so interesting, because he was like, I've always taken an interest in you. I've literally gutted every other wife I've ever had, or something like that. Every other woman I've ever dated or whatever, I've got it. And like, the fact is, I never did you. That shows our connection. It's just funny that happens while she's also in the process of like, her and Catcher having their moment regardless. Nevertheless, so there's that thing of like, I think that's going to be a storyline that ends up going forward with the fact, because I'm talking, well, I'm going to be all over the place, but like nothing was 100% resolved. They dealt some damage, but this is still an ever-growing situation because there's so many spirits left in the town, and people are growing restless, and the barrier's starting to falter. Balfagor is saying like, oh no, like it's a one-time spell. There's no like recharging it, which is like, he claims to know, he claims that he's working with them because he wants hell the way it is, but it's like, I don't know. That's why I'm surprised no one stepped up to take the plate of like running hell. There's no one to get in your way anymore. Lucifer's going, at least potentially, depending on, that whole Nick situation. He was pulling Lucifer back from the nothing. So he's there in some semblance. And we know that he is awake, which I'm wondering, like, once again, why is that not an issue like it is with Cassio? Maybe there's a little bit of difference. Maybe he's hiding the fact is that he's awake. Maybe I call it the nothing. I mean, the empty. Maybe it just doesn't want to, let him out. I don't know. Like, I still feel like that might be something that kind of potentially ends up circling back around, but we'll ultimately see. It's actually interesting because even Ketch was like, I was actually sent here to kill Balfagor, but it's like, oh, he's actually with the good guys, so I'll leave him alone for now. And even Dean had thrown out there like, oh yeah, we'll leave him alive because we need him for now. And you see the look on Balfagor's face of knowing like this isn't a permanent situation. So like if he helps them, so he's probably trying to keep this running as long as possible. As long as there is an issue with spirits and stuff like that, they need his help, so. There's also the whole thing about like, oh yeah, like everyone now learning like, oh yeah, God's our enemy. It's like, it's, because, and even with the British men of letters, which I think I referenced them last episode, that the fact of the matter is everyone's going to have to come together for this. This is the fight amongst fights. So it's going to involve, yeah, they haven't had the best relationship with the men of letters. Obviously, Ketch has, been on his own. He even talks about the fact that he's freelancing and whatnot. But I think eventually it will come the time when they will have to join forces with the British men of letters too, just because this is a problem, not just the American hunters, not just the Winchesters, like I said, and it's not even just going to be the British men of letters. Literally, the entire world's going to need to come together. I think both supernatural and non-supernaturals, because this is the fight amongst fights. Because obviously, we even got a demon in the mix, we got an angel in the mix. So it's actually, they end up meeting up with Kevin, which is so interesting. I'm like, dude, Kevin's here too. And the fact of the matter is, I love that he was like, yeah, I've kind of got a little bit of street cred because God actually sent me to hell. And the fact is, I was someone that God personally made sure to send to hell. Kind of gives him some street cred. Like, it's like, oh, he's the bad boy of hell, which that's kind of super sad because they're like, no, God said he was going to send you to heaven. But it's like, no, he, sent me to hell, which is like obviously super messed up. And it's sad too because Balfagor talks about the fact is that no, like if you go into hell, there's no getting into heaven because heaven won't take you. But then it's like, but what about my dad? What about Bobby? They were in hell before, but then they went to heaven. It's like, well, yeah, God made exceptions for them, and he's not your best friend anymore right now. So that's not going to be something you'll see happening. But the big question is like, well, why the hell would he send Kevin there? Just because it's like, oh, you're a prophet, you were one of my former prophets, and so like just for shits and giggles, I'm sending you there. Or maybe it was something he was going to use later as a plot thread of like, oh my God, Kevin's in hell, guys, come on, like maybe it was a storyline he was waiting to use. I mean, I think that's so interesting that they could actually play into that because obviously this is supposed to be God's little narrative, his little play to kind of dictate how things go. So storyline elements that might not be 100%, resolved within the show. You can make the argument like, oh, God hadn't circled back to kind of deal with these potential plot holes or whatever the case may be. I think that's something interesting you can think about, which obviously God's got his side of things, which we'll get to that soon enough. But yeah. Luckily, they were able to fully deal with this whole spirit situation. Only thing it cost was, catching a couple iron bullets to get what's his face? Jack the Ripper out of him, which I also love that situation. I was almost halfway expecting Rowena to go with him just because of everything. It's just kind of a mutual nod and stuff. But it's like, come on, I want you two to have your moment. It would have been so cute if she had gone with him. But it's like, obviously, they still need her help, in the town and everything because there's so many ghosts still left. Because I was wondering about that. I was like, where did all the spirits go? I guess they went to the nearest town. Like, is that literally because I think even like the cemetery where they were like the hole that they were busting out from. I mean, to be fair, like, the whole thing is like all the gates open. So did they all open leading to that one point near that cemetery at the end of season 14? Or are there still other places around the world where they're still coming through the doorways that have been open? I'm curious about that because like there could be a lot more like situations where like we could, haven't checked in on in a while. So this might be more widespread, or maybe they are all allocated to this one particular town, that cemetery or whatever, because that one opening could fall in the boundaries of like the circumference of the town that the barrier is at, so I'm really curious to see ultimately like how they kind of like how that potentially gets handled. But there are so many portals going through, and it's not enough for like the what was it that Dean referred to it as? Was it the Soul Collector? Is that what he called it? Or it was something else. But it might have been, maybe not. But nevertheless, it's like that's not enough to deal with that many spirits because it could barely contain the ones that they got. And that was a shit ton. So it's like, what ends up happening going forward from here? What's a solution that they can deal with this? I don't know. Then there's the whole situation with Kevin. They let Kevin out because it's like, we want to do more for you, but it's like, what can they do? Because he doesn't want to go back to hell, because if he goes back to hell, the ghosts are just going to torture him because they know like, oh, you're kicking it with the Winchesters and stuff like that. You're kicking it with hunters and stuff like that. So you're not the bad boy we kind of thought you were. I mean, obviously, Jack the Ripper was kind of like, I never kind of believed all that, but regardless. So there's that. So they let him out, which is like obviously roaming the world, kind of like not being grounded or attached to anything. Eventually, potentially, he'll go mad or turn into a malevolent spirit. So it's like he'd rather take his chances with that rather than stay. But it's like, love you guys. And Belphegor lets hit the doorway open long enough for him to slip through. So I doubt that's the last we'll see of Kevin. We might see something more and potentially come down later down the pipeline potentially with that. I don't know. I'm curious to see what that ends up being, but I do, like I said, I like that this isn't like, I thought this is, this is going to be dealt with next episode. It's like, no, this is still an ongoing situation. And like I said, the people in town are getting restless. So eventually the truth is going to have to come out and be like, all right, this is what's going down. And I think it's going to turn into a thing of, like I brought up earlier, of like, we got to let them know, because the best army you can get is literally getting everyone into this fight. Not just hunters, because hunters make up a small portion of people who know the truth. So, like I said, this could also be an opportunity to bring in so many familiar faces you ain't seen for a while. Because I even brought it up last episode too, of how this show has a tendency to just bring back storylines that they haven't touched in a while. Just like dabble in them a little bit or full blown bring them back. Obviously, there's like, what about Jody and Patience and Claire and Alex? That team. Once again, and I think it was something I even referenced too. Like, what about Dark Kai? She's kicking it somewhere in this world. What's that going to turn like? We're going to get some like major returns, and that's what I'm thinking. We'll see if they kind of go that route. Because it's something I've talked about before that I was actually kind of shocked. This season is going to be 20 episodes. I don't know if they changed that, but I'm pretty sure like from what I was told, it's going to be 20 episodes, which I've talked about before. Like, no shows ever get like full blown final seasons. So to see this show potentially get like, I mean, with the exception of like 2 or 3 episodes, because it's typically, I think the show's like typically 22, maybe 23 episodes, with the exception of season 3, because that was like 16. That was around the time of the writer's strike, and last season only being 20, but still that's, so it's a full blown, like, we're diving into this final season is kind of the point I'm trying to make. But obviously that's just one side of the episode. The other side of the episode, because I saw her name and I got giddy. I saw Emily Swallow's name. I was like, oh my God, we're getting Amara. We have not touched that side of things since season 11. That was literally the last time she's popped up, was at the end of season 11. And obviously they made references to her here and there. But to know that, like, oh, she's around and kicking, and the fact is she was relaxing. I don't love, like, God's the one massaging her for a little bit. And she's like, oh my God. Did she say it's you or ill? Because I think it's so much funnier if she said ill. Because it's like, I don't want you rubbing my temples, bro. Ill. But the fact is, he tracked her down and everything. And he's like, oh, like, the fact is we can go make new species, go to another dimension, stuff like that. I'm like, and the fact is, he's so ready to do it. It's like, you're God, you're almighty, you're all powerful and stuff like that. So it's like, because even she's trying to figure it out. She's like, why are you here? And he's like, oh, think about what we did in retreat and everything. When we took our little break together. Obviously, she wants her independence of him. It's like, okay, we had our problems, we made up and everything, but it's like, I'm kind of enjoying not being around you. It's like, the reason why I love everyone here is because they're not you. But then she notices, she's like, something's a little different, something's wrong. And it's like, oh my God, you need me. That's what this is all about. Because he had looked into the wound, he touches it, which is interesting because the moment he touched it, it felt pain. So did Sam. So it's like, okay. And that's interesting because I thought the wound might have because when he got shot at the end of season 14, it seemed like he was just kind of like, oh, really? That's all you got? It didn't seem like it fazed him. It does. That weapon actually can hurt him. So if they did use that, they could potentially end up killing Chuck if they decide to go down that route. But the fact is, even with all his powers, he can't heal it. And in fact, Amara points out the fact is, you're actually weaker Because the fact of the matter is, that's why you're coming to me. Because you actually can't leave this world. You don't have the power, the almighty power, to slip into another dimension or an alternate world like you could before. You need me to be the one that kind of have the power to rip to another universe and drag you along. And that's what this is all about. It's like the fact is, he's getting weaker, which means, and the fact is, it's like, oh, you're scared. Which he's been scared before, but this is on a new level because literally anyone potentially, he's still powerful, but he's not as powerful as he was before. So people could still end up killing him, which obviously the Winchesters are kind of like, I think he's actually worried that they might be able to take him down. You know, they're kind of intent on killing you. I mean, the fact is, you know, Sam took his shot last season. It's like, well, given another opportunity, he could actually bring you down, which is like, I mean, technically the power did come from God. The only thing that could stop God would be something of equal or more powerful power. And, you know, you'd assume that'd be Amara, because even Amara's like, the fact of the matter is, you couldn't hold me back even at your best. And because let's not forget, because he was running scared, he literally got the Winchesters and everyone involved trying to take her down. Like, he needed other avenues to kind of help take her down. And now it's a situation of, well, even you're definitely not at your best. And the fact of the matter is, and kind of even talking about the fact is, you locked me up in a prison and now I'm kind of doing the same thing to you, because she's saying she's just going to bounce, which I'm wondering, are we going to see any more Amara? That would be pretty dope, but she's probably going to kick it to another world. And now he's here kind of not powerless, but not as strong as he was before. And I'm like, oh my God. Plus she doesn't even know the fact is, like, a lot of her family's dead. Like, you never got to meet your nephew's son. She never got to meet Jack, which is kind of a shame, but that doesn't mean that still can't happen. I mean, I wonder how she would have felt if she found out, like, oh, God killed his own grandson. So obviously, like I said, and even like there's so many open storylines too, because of like where Jack was the last time we saw him in season 14, at the end of season 14, in the empty, and like I said, the whole Lucifer situation, plus who else? You know, once again, I'm throwing it out there. What about your boy Crowley? Come on, the final season. Come on, please. It'd make my day, dude. Like I said, I think this is going to be the season of familiar faces because we're closing out. So I was like, bring as much as we can back. We got the episodes to stretch this stuff out. So it's definitely going to be interesting, you know, with these new developments. And I'm curious to see what that does mean, because obviously it seemed like, and there was even an interesting point where like Cassio was talking about he was trying to heal Ketch, but he couldn't. It was like, I'm wondering why. I was like, was it something about the bullets? But now I'm thinking like, no, it wasn't about the bullets. It's because God's in the state that he's in right now. What happened? God made angels, so their powers potentially come from him. When he's not almighty, neither are they. Or they're not almighty, but they're not as powerful. So that's probably why Cassio's powers are waning as an angel, because God is actually getting weaker. So, which begs the question, what about all the other angels? What about heaven? Because let's not forget that heaven's still in turmoil because there's only a handful of angels left, and it's like, okay, so what's going to go on with that too? There's so much to keep in mind going forward with this final season, dude. Like I said, I cannot wait. Like I said, I'm just so surprised because I feel like the show never has like back-to-back episodes dealing with the same situation. It's usually like, yeah, there's an overarching plot, but usually something else will come up. It's like, no, this is like, and I'm wondering, is the rest of the season potentially going to be structured like this, where it's like we're dealing like that, it is all going to be 100% related to this. I mean, there are moments where it's like they'll take on another case because they're working on something. So there's like, you can make the argument there's filler episodes, but I'm wondering, is this season going to be straight up like, no, plot. I don't know. It's definitely going to be interesting to see, like I said, where the next episode takes us with all of this. This is getting nuts, and I'm so excited. And now moving on to this week's episode of Legacies, a great episode. There's a lot of stuff that went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Hope is chasing after the monster she believes to be a troll, but it leads her to Mystic Falls High, which is like, oh, of course it would. And she runs into some people, which I'm like, okay, that's going to, like, I guess, and I'm skipping around, but I'm assuming at the end of the day, she's going to be at Mystic Fall High instead of like going back to the Salvatore school, because obviously there's just too many memories and too many associations there. But nevertheless, of course, who would she run into? Alaric, because he's now the teacher at the school again, which is interesting when you actually think about it, because it kind of came full circle for him. Oh no, because I forgot, not teacher, he's a principal now, but still, he's kind of shifted positions over at Mystic Falls. But it's interesting because now after all this time, he's back at Mystic Falls, especially everything, all the shenanigans that went down in the Vampire Diaries. But it's like, oh, Hope gives this fake name and stuff like that. And obviously being around him is hard because it's just like, this is another person you care about a lot that has no memory of who you are. But then Alaric is like, when he learns the truth and everything, he's like, oh, well, at first he's like, wait, the fact is her skills and everything. He's like, you're not just a regular student. She's like, I'm a vampire hunter. Fact is, there's a monster, it's a troll or something. And he's like, the fact of the matter is, he's like, I'm kind of famous. Basically, Alaric kind of boosts himself up. He's like, my name's Alaric. It's like, I'm kind of a big deal. And it's like, right. Hope's got to be like, yeah, sure, okay. And so he's like, you leave it to me and everything. Which I even love that moment between Hope and that dude that she met at the school. He's like, oh, because like, Alaric's trying to put up in front of like, oh yeah, I know you're thinking about trying out for the football team or whatever. You could be, this or that. And she's like, if I'm gonna try out for, and the dude's like, oh, so are you just stalking me or what? And she's like, if we know who's stalking who here, and if I was gonna try out, I'd go for QB1. Everyone's like, ooh. I'm like, that's definitely gonna be something, especially because of the whole Josie and Landon thing. Like, I guess Landon's gonna move on because he doesn't remember her, so she's gonna try to do the same thing. And I think that's where that is, which is kind of heartbreaking because you're like, oh, Landon and Hope get back together, but she doesn't want to take that step because she thinks, hey, he's happy, I don't want to ruin that happiness for him. But lo and behold, Alaric and Hope work together to take down the troll, which is like, it's like, oh, you didn't also tell me you're a witch too, so it's like, okay. But then like Alaric quickly pieces it together because he's like, the fact, for one, I love the fact is Mia walks in and she's like, what's that? And it's like, all right, things got complicated. Bring in MG to wipe her mind and everything. But it's like, hey, and it's got to be weird being around MG too. It's like, oh, here's another person I know. But it's like first introductions, even though we already know each other pretty well. But nevertheless, it's actually something I didn't really think about because I think in my head I was thinking like Alaric and Hope's relationship only goes as far as season 1. It's like, no, it doesn't. The fact of the matter is she was at the Salvatore school between season 4 and season 5. Like during that time skip, that's where she was at. She literally was there at the end of season 4. So it's like her and Alaric have had an even deeper connection. So nevertheless, the fact is, Alaric quickly picks up on it. It's like, the fact is, I knew to throw the arrow to you. That means we fought together before. So meaning I've known you before. The fact of the matter is, basically bringing up, you're the one that went to Malivore and has been forgotten by everyone. So it's like for her, it's like the fact is I don't even want to bring that up because the fact of the matter is all I'm going to do is cause you problems. Like the fact of the matter is your memories are never going to come back, which that's not 100% true because she doesn't know this, but Landon's in the process of remembering her. He gets little tidbits here and there every time he dies. Like it's somewhere in his mind. There's just like a magical block. I think the memories never completely erase. It's just a magic block on those memories exists and you need a key to unlock them. That's what I'm thinking. So the memories are there. It's just, once again, referencing Kingdom Hearts, you do like chain of memories. The chains have been basically severed, but those connections are there. You just got to reattach those connections. And exactly like that. It's actually kind of interesting because I'm sure it's borderlining on some like Sora and Kairi situation, and like I'm going deep into this Kingdom Hearts comparison, but like Kairi was the key to getting Sora his memories back because she's the person that's most important to him. The moment he remembers Hope, it's all going to come flooding back. He might end up being the catalyst that makes everyone remember. Maybe, I don't know. I think that excuse me. I think that'd be kind of an interesting approach to it, but that's where my mindset's in it. But nevertheless, obviously it's got to suck too because you're seeing Hope. Hope is seeing Josie and Landon on a date and everything. It's like, okay. So I even love the fact that Landon's over there listening to the music and they're kicking the troll's ass. They end up finding out it's not a troll, it's actually a Cyclops. But them working together again end up defeating the thing. So I thought that was pretty nice teamwork. And it was almost like, I don't know, there's almost this beautiful moment of like it's turning to ash and stuff like that, sparks and embers and stuff like that. Landon turns around and he sees Hope and you can tell like something's there, like there's a spark there. Interesting considering, the aesthetic of everything of like all the sparks and stuff coming from it. But she walks away. And, obviously, Alaric's like, I know you're not going to stay, but here's this crossbow for you. And it's like, oh, that's super sweet. And, Hope has her talk with Landon. It's like basically they're both having relationship issues. Her having to deal with a boy who doesn't remember her. And the fact is he's dealing with a girl where he's trying to do everything perfect. She's trying to do everything perfect, which we'll kind of dive into later. But it's like someone kind of taught me the lesson, a boy taught me the lesson of like, you don't, it's okay to be, basically it's okay to be imperfect around each other. And it's like, instead of you both striving to be perfect, it's just kind of like enjoy things as they are. It's okay to kind of fail, for things not to, be 100% perfect. And he even brings up the fact is, it's like, yeah, I ordered this milkshake, but I didn't even want it. I don't know why I ordered it. And I'm assuming, I don't remember, but I'm assuming because it's connected to, her. The reason why he took Josie to get sushi and stuff like that is probably because he was thinking of hope. There's still like that spark is there. He doesn't know why, but some part of his brain, it's like, oh yeah, like this is a girl I like, so why don't I give her the things that I know she would like? And I might not necessarily like this, but he's subconsciously ordering stuff for Hope without realizing it. And obviously that makes her break down, which makes her turn to Alaric. It's like, which is kind of interesting when she has to drop like, my name is Hope Michelson. I'm Klaus and Haley's daughter, which that's got to be like a thing of like, wait, what? Klaus and Haley had a kid? And wait, what? What? Because that, which obviously that's a huge plot of their story and stuff like that's a huge plot in the originals. But to think about that being a blind spot in your mind, at like, wait, they had a kid? Klaus Michelson had a kid? Wait, what? Because you also have to think about like all the other aspects to it of just like, well, it's like he's a vampire and Haley, so it's a complicated thing. So that's something you gotta process. But also at the same time, she's like, the boy I like doesn't even remember me. The fact of the matter is I'm all alone. I have no one. That's why she was gonna leave here, because there was no connections. Like, cause it's a one-way connection being surrounded by all these people you love and care about, but they don't remember you. None of your conversations, none of your experiences, those relationships are back to zero if you want to look at it at like, want to look at it from a persona, those S links are back to level 1, essentially. So, well, they're back to not even being level 1. They haven't even been established, if you want to, like I said, going down the persona route of explaining things. But nevertheless, and that sweet moment of her being like, I have my family's gone. Since losing my family, you were the closest thing I've ever had to a dad. That's always been a thing between her and Alaric. I think this is the first time she's ever admitted that, Because obviously that was issues in season 1, because Lizzie kind of felt jealous because I know that's my dad. Well, yeah, it's like, you're my dad. I'm sure Josie felt it to a certain extent, but like, you're my dad. So why should I, have to share you with someone that you're not their dad either. So that's the whole thing in itself. So, and then, he's there holding Hope. So I think she will be attending to school. He'll probably kind of come up with some like fake files and stuff like that to kind of give her a background to make it okay for her to transfer into school, which is interesting just to think kind of, like I said, everything going full circle. Damon and Stefan, like everyone has special connections to that school. Alaric does, because even Lizzie and Josie technically do, because their mom attended the school. Well, one of them. Well, we'll go ahead and still say mom, because obviously, Joe was bio mom, but obviously Caroline's their mom because she raised him and everything. So, but still, it's just, like I said, it's just interesting to see things come full circle, because we went tidbits here and there to Mystic Falls. So it's just kind of interesting to see the new generation, like connect with this place that has no direct connection to them, but more so that indirect connection to just everyone that we come to know through, the Vampire Diaries. So it's just interesting in a certain extent, because hell, even like Klaus and like Rebecca, like they were at that school for a while, because obviously like the originals before the originals were kicking it in Mystic Falls, so it does kind of bring a more direct connection to even Hope, but that's a whole tangent in itself. So there's that side of things. There's a new headmaster at the school played by, I always never know how to properly pronounce his name. I don't know whether it just be Alex. I'm assuming it's supposed to be like Alexis, or Alexei Denisov. I'm sure I'm butchering his name. It's freaking Wesley from Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Angel, which I'm more familiar with Angel. Like, I'm slightly familiar with Buffy, but I've watched way more Angel than I have Buffy. So that's kind of pretty dope. I swear there was something more recently he did that I'm familiar with. I want to say it was like, it might have been early episodes of Grimm. I want to say it was like season 2 or something like that. Maybe. I'm pretty sure he was on like earlier parts of Grimm. I feel like it, but I could be mistaken. He's popped up from time to time. It's also interesting, just tidbit, side note, he's married to Allison Hannigan. I don't know, just interesting tidbit of information, which is kind of interesting. Like, obviously, he's back in his supernatural realm, and it's like, obviously, which is interesting, too, because he's a witch, and his wife played Willow, who was a witch, and Buffy/Angel, so it's just, I don't know, the connections there are just kind of interesting in my mind. But nevertheless, Is it Allison Hannigan or is it just like Elisa? No, it's Allison, right? Right? Or is it Elisa Hannigan? I don't remember. I'm second guessing myself right now. Don't worry, I looked it up. It totally is Allison. It would have bothered me not to kind of get that right. So I was totally right the first time. I shouldn't even second guess myself. Regardless, all of that is staying in. But so it's interesting. He's kind of the new headmaster. Kind of a pompous asshole, to be kind of frank. But obviously, like, he's going to talk about the fact is that everything that went through before, and everyone, it's not just him, but even like students are talking about the failures that were on Alaric's shoulders, which is like he handled things the best he could. It was just extenuating circumstances. There's a lot, like obviously Malivor's connection to Landon and everything. So it just obviously, they tried their best to, keep everyone safe, but everything's going to falter on him. It's like, if it wasn't for him, none of you would be alive. So those who want to blame him. And obviously, it sucks because Josie and Lizzie kind of have to sit there where everyone kind of badmouths their dad. So, they have to deal with that situation. But the fact of the matter is he wants the school to kind of be perfect. And he brought up something interesting. I'm surprised Dorian didn't kind of have anything to say with it, being like literally the only human at the school. It's the fact that he brought up the whole situation, which I'm curious. Is Emma going to come back or not? We'll see about that. But nevertheless, the fact of the matter is, he brings up the fact is eventually you'll be able to leave this school, and the fact of the matter is the supernatural world will kind of be more of the norm. So I don't. One possibility you can take this as being kind of the more negative, cynical side of things is the fact is he's setting up a situation where it's like, oh, humans won't be in control anymore, supernaturals will. That's one potential route you could take that down, upon thought process wise, but we'll see. It could also just be like, we're going to be integrated within the human world, so there would be no separation. They're no longer having to fear like human retribution because this will become the norm. That's another way, but obviously it could be a combination of the two. Nevertheless, it's interesting because later on you see that it seems like he's tugging at the darkness in Josie. Well, because it seems like he's gathering a bunch of witches like, and like basically an advanced class of magic. So he wants Josie. So which that's interesting because it's going to be interesting to see how that storyline plays into because obviously like Josie and Lizzie are like, oh, we'll get this merge stuff out of her mind. But it's like, yeah, even if you take it out of your mind, it's still going to be something to deal with. So it's going to be interesting to see like Josie's storyline, what kind of impact that will have potentially on the future that is going to be this merge situation, So there's that. Since we are talking about the siblings, let's talk about Lizzie's side of things because she's trying to say yes to a lot of things. Caleb hears this and is trying to hook his boy up, hook MG up to be like, yo, she's saying yes, take this as an opportunity to kind of move forward. He kind of asks her to a study day, which the sad thing is you can tell in her face she's reluctantly saying, yes, yeah, sure, okay, all right, But then she meets a dude named Sebastian, which my mind goes like, who are you really? Are you using the name Sebastian? Is that actually Clark, but he's in a new body or something like that? Maybe like a body was resurrected and he implanted himself in it. That's what I was kind of wondering about. I don't know. Because obviously this is the way he's always looked, but maybe leaving, you'd assume he looked the same way as he did before. I don't know. But then part of me was wondering, is Sebastian a vampire? Because I tried to pay attention to his hands, but I didn't pay good enough attention to see if he had like a daylight ring or something. But it seemed like maybe not. It seemed like he was just out and about. So he might not be a vampire. He might be something else from Malivore. So we'll see. Because Clark has no direct connection to the school. So meeting people would be like, oh, that's interesting. I don't know. It'd be interesting to see if that ends up being Clark or not, or just someone else entirely. But we'll get to that later. And it's so sad because MG's trying to make moves and, he has that back and forth with Caleb because he's like trying to be like, oh yeah, like, I was like, we need to take our relationship to the next level. And Caleb's like, what the hell is that? You're not trying to get her to join your like multi-layered company. And then he tries to kind of go like, cool, is that, yo, Lizzie, yeah, it's like, what the hell was that? It's like, no, just kind of speak from the heart. And he does. It's like, the fact of the matter is he knows Lizzie, the good, the bad, the terrible, the bitchy. The fact is he knows her favorite episodes of her favorite TV show. And he knows all there is to know about her. And Caleb was like, yeah, just tell her that. But when he tries to, she admits like, hey, like she knows that MG has a crush on her, but she didn't know like that he was willing to kind of open up and want to take the relationship to the next level. Sadly, she went first and kind of broke up down the fact is of like, yeah, that spell you helped me make, I was actually trying to track down a dude and this and that. And it's like MG just being who he is, kind of just go, yeah, smiles and kind of accepts it. And she's like, what were you going to say? He was just like, I'm glad to see that you were happy today is all, And it's sad. And it's that sad thing of like, and there's that element with everyone's relationships, whether it be everything between Josie and Landon and the complicated thing with Hope. Now even this was like, the fact is everyone thinks they're trying to make sure the other person is happy. MG's putting someone else's happiness before his own, and obviously Hope is doing the same thing. Sad thing is, Josie was doing the same thing too, because for her it's like, because you even see in this episode where like there's that girl who's kind of hitting on Landon and stuff like that, because everyone thinks he's a hero, which I like that kind of being a story element. And Landon's kind of uncomfortable with it, like, no, I didn't kill Malivore, but apparently I'm getting all this attention, like I'm being awarded a medal like I did. But the fact is, there's that moment where Josie's like, the fact of the matter is, like, obviously, like I had a feeling where it's like, oh yeah, like she didn't want to admit, I was like, is it, because I was just like, oh no, I totally like, sushi or whatever. Like I was like, you don't like seafood or something, do you? And it's like, no, apparently she's allergic to like seaweed or whatever, which he was like, dude, like there's nothing but like, there's a shit ton of seaweed when it comes to sushi. Like, why didn't you tell me? Because she didn't want to be the one to kind of drag down the date. Because for her, it's like, because even that girl that was kind of like hitting on Landon, she performs a spell, which I'm like, that's so interesting, because that seemed like a Lizzie thing to do. Like Lizzie's very possessive, and I think because Josie's kind of happy for in a long time, she wants to hold on to that, so she's willing to do whatever it takes to kind of hold on. And it just seemed like that was more of a Lizzie move than a Josie move. So I thought that was kind of interesting. But for her, it's like, the thing is, she's always been, taking care of other people, and now that Landon doesn't need her to take it, just she doesn't know what role to play, because for her she's always been kind of the caretaker, whether it be Lizzie. I'd even make the argument maybe even in her relationship with Penelope. For her, it's like, because she's always been like that, it's like it's hard for her to be in a relationship, whether it be a boy or a girl. Like that's always like a bit of her stuff she's got to work on, which even Landon's like, I got to work on the fact is that I'm always kind of going above and beyond as his boyfriend thing of trying to make everything so perfect. He's like, I'm being someone I'm not. The fact of the matter is, I, played into this hero thing because it made me feel like, hey, I belong, because the only thing that ever made him feel like he belonged was having Ralph there. Raph there. It helped having Hope there. They made him feel like he was at home, made him feel more like a family. But obviously with Raphael gone, that causes complications. Without knowing Hope, there's a piece of himself that's missing. That feeling and everything he has with Hope is gone, but he doesn't know that. So they've both got a little bit of growing when it comes to this situation. Because I love that the fact is they didn't know whether to hug or kiss or whatever. Everything was just super awkward. And I love it. I love the teenage awkwardness of it all. As someone who was extremely awkward as a teenager, who is still awkward as an adult, it's just, I love that awkwardness, because I think it's an adorable thing. When it comes to like two people being in love, I love being awkward, So obviously, their relationship is deepening, which at the same time, you're just like, oh, gut punch. That is just like, oh, but it's like Landon and, Hope. It's like, oh, it's so good, So I don't know. I'm interested to see, where that story ends up heading, especially down the route of, like I said, Josie. It seems like the new headmaster's pulling more at her dark side, maybe. Might be something we'll see. I might see more dark side of Josie this season. Like, I don't know, I think that's kind of an interesting step that she would go that far as to make some other girls nosebleed, because it's like, yo, don't be giving attention to my man, type of thing. So that's just kind of interesting. Obviously, there's a thing at the end, and I was an idiot. I saw like the fire and stuff like that. It's like, that's the symbol for Malivore, isn't it? That was like the original spell, like they molded into the original golem that was Malivore, right? Or am I being stupid? Because obviously it's being cut into someone else's head. It's who's ever behind that hood, which I'm like, is that Sebastian? Is that someone else? Because I'm curious, because it seems like those stories might be connected, but at the same time not. Because obviously we know Malivore opened the portal, so it's like, did Clark go through, or did something or someone else come through? Did that include Sebastian? Like I said, is Sebastian Clark? Is that supposed to be Sebastian/Clark underneath that cover? Because he doesn't know magic, I don't think. But because like I said, at the same time in the premiere, that was that was happening at the same time he was coming out. So not unless there's some human on the other side trying to summon up Malivore and trying to help on this side of things, I don't know. I don't know how to really kind of interpret all that. So either way, a lot of stuff to kind of, process, and I'm so curious to see where all this ends up heading into the next episode. I'm very excited to see what happens. This season's already starting off so great. And now moving on to this week's episode of Evil, a great episode, a very dark episode in many different regards. I mean, it's not like the other episodes haven't been dark as well, but this one just seems in particular even darker with just everything that went down. But obviously, let's break the episode down. Well, basically, it seems like this case that, they end up investigating involves this boy named Eric. I'm not a psychiatrist. Have no background in psychology, so I don't know what the proper terminology would be. I guess it would be like psychopathic, maybe. The way he kind of has no empathy, essentially. The fact of the matter is, there's a little boy that basically he's done many different things. Apparently, he's tried to poison his parents. He's bit his sister until she bled and dug in deep because she was laughing and it was too loud and he thought it was annoying. So he wanted her to stop and he knew causing her pain would make her stop. So it's like, okay, so what about the fact is he had a classmate of his lay down on a railroad track and having him count to like 40 or like 45 before he could get up. But the only reason why the kid didn't actually get hit by the train was because a teacher came and got him off the track beforehand. So it's like stuff like that. So it then turns into this thing of like, okay, so we need to determine whether or not this is something psychological or whether there is something demonic. Obviously, that's the whole, balance between David's part of the investigation as well as, Kristen's part of the investigation, because obviously the parents have gone to many different psychologists and it's just like he's on these different medications which work for a little while, but then eventually they don't. And the parents are just kind of like at their wits end because it wasn't always like this. They talked about the fact that it kind of crept up on them. Like this behavior's kind of trails back to about 2 years ago. Something just happened and he changed it. Like he used to be such a sweet kid, but then it's just something 2 years ago changed that. Obviously, Ben's coming at this from the perspective of like maybe there's some copper in the piping or whatever, and like long exposure to that would kind of eventually manifest itself as some psychological stuff. So it turns into the thing of like trying to figure out like, okay, so which angle is this, coming from? Which is interesting too, because even Kristen tried to be like, okay, like, that's this part of the case. It's like, Ben, do you mind checking my showers? Because everything that she and her, because she's worried, I guess, like that might be an element that might be leading to why she was having those dreams and the reason why one of her daughters kind of had the same dreams, which that still wouldn't explain the fact that you both had the same dream. But obviously you might allocate it back to like, oh, the movie or whatever might be like, oh, maybe Kristen saw this movie, or maybe, her kid had seen it before, one of her children had seen it before, regardless of the fact, maybe that's what, it's like maybe the copper and the piping might be the precursor to what led to like the dreams and the nightmares and her potentially hallucinating stuff like that. So there's that whole situation. But Kristen kind of runs him through the different tests, and it does come up that the kid kind of has no empathy, and it's actually kind of, a situation of like fake it till you make it. Like the fact of the matter is you got to teach the kid to be like, hey, look at human behavior and kind of copy it, and basically having to memorize like, oh, this is the moments where you laugh, this is moments where you cry, this and that, trying to teach them basically human behavior so that when the time comes, it becomes natural rather than being something you kind of have to think about. And obviously David tries to handle things from a more spiritual side of things, of making it so teaching him to kind of pray, but it's like you don't even have to look at it as praying. You could just look at it as like, oh, asking God for things that you want. David even had him touch a cross and stuff like that, or rather a rosary to see whether or not, anything would happen, but there was no reaction. Even the fact is, and on Kristen's side of things, she had him like, oh, read these emotions and tell me basically what they were, but he got to anger and it's like he couldn't process it. It's like, I don't know. So it's like, okay, because the whole thing is, it's like, it's even hard to say like, okay, even looking for demonic possession within kids, David tried to say like, it's not something that's easy, so it's like, It's a complicated thing. It does seem like, hey, maybe it is psychological, or maybe it could be possession. You just don't know in this regard. It's actually kind of interesting because you have that aspect of David actually kind of reaching him, because it's like, oh, here's this thing about, they bond over graphic novels and stuff like that. And it seems like David's talking to him actually kind of shifted things for him because he started praying. And the fact is, he was asking his mom to check his homework. He was mowing the lawn without anyone telling him or asking him to. So it seemed like, oh, maybe there was some progress here. And it's like, you kind of let your guard down a little bit. I'm like, all right, wait, it's like, maybe things are going to take a turn. I'm like, but it's still like in the back of my mind, I'm like, there's going to be a dark turn to it. And it turns out to be one. But obviously everyone's kind of hopeful because it's like, oh my God, the parents are at their wits' end. The mom is just so happy. She's like, thank you so much. It's like, David's like, no, I'll come over. I'll kind of help him with like the basics of drawing because he wants to grow up and become like, comic book artist or, graphic novel artist and stuff like that. So it's like, hey, everything's good. And it's like David sees him praying and everything. It's like, oh man, that's good. And then there's a situation and he's like, oh, like the fact is, like, it's like, oh, like, let me go. You want to go inside? He's like, no, I don't want to. And I'm like, why doesn't he want to go? I was like, don't tell me you did something crazy like you already killed your parents or something like that. I was like, that must be why he's avoiding going inside. But it's like, oh no. In fact, he tried to drown his baby sister, like was literally successful in it to a certain extent. But it's like, holy crap. At first I was like, okay, it's going to turn out to be a doll or whatever. And it's going to look psychotic because it's like, oh man, sociopath is the word I was thinking about earlier. It just kind of clicked in my head just now. But I was thinking like it's going to look a little like, I was like, oh man, that's what he was planning to do. I was actually going like, it's not a real baby, David. It turns out, no, it really was his. I was like, oh my God, making it even darker. Cause I thought like it'd be dark if like, oh, he was just kind of being like, ha ha, ha. I'm, kind of showing what he would have done. But no, he straight up took his youngest sibling and had her in the pool drowning. And it's like, and even being like, the fact is that you told me if I prayed, God, told God what I want, he'd make it happen that, and I wanted my sibling to go away. And it's like, wow. So now it turns into the thing of like, okay, so what do we do? Obviously, David's pushing more so. It's like, we need to kind of do this exorcism. And even Kristen's like, because, the father was like, the fact didn't matter. Not the boy's father, but priest-wise father was like, hey, are we really sure, that this isn't just something psychological? But Kristen's like, honestly, psychology is always going to say like there's an answer to it. But honestly, this family is going to live long enough if we do not intervene right now. So it's like, so I thought that was kind of neat. I was like, all right. So it's like, okay, our first exorcism in the show. I was like, all right, I was wondering if you'd ever, get to this. And here we are. But the police are there. I'm like, oh, what the hell is up with that? And it's like, oh no, Eric's run away. The moment they said that excuse, the mom said that excuse, I was like, they killed him. And it's like, they did. And even everyone else, Ben, David, and even Kristen realized that. Where like, they're like, oh, because like you see Kristen kind of already realizing it. And the mom kind of sees it. And she's like, I love all my children equally. But, when something, I want to just protect my children, obviously. And so it turns into a thing of like, I want you to understand, like, pray for him, pray for us. And it's like, holy crap. Like dude, I can't even, like, I don't even want to say, like, you understand, but that is a morbid way to end. I mean, to be fair, none of these endings have been, like, on the most happy of notes. In certain regards, there's silver linings. Last episode ended off on a super bummer of, like, oh, yeah, John Glover's character killed himself at the very end of the episode, where it's like, oh, everything's looking up. It's like, hey, at the very least, there's a little hope, because the fact is he can be maybe exercising it, everything will be all right, but it's like, who knows now? Like, if they really would have ever had that chance, would it have worked out like that? It's just like, that's a super sad ending of just like, they felt like they had no other choice to protect their children, their other children they needed to take care. They had already taken so many precautions, locking him up, like, in his room. Like, they reached out to like a federal program, but that program had returned him after a week. It's like, they're supposed to take everyone in. The fact of the matter is they returned him in a week. There's a lot to that. So it's hard to say, I don't think we'll ever know for sure whether it was something psychological, whether he was just kind of like a sociopath or something, or whether there was like some demonic presence in this whole situation. It's just a tragic way for this whole story to end. I didn't expect that. That was kind of, like I said, this is a dark episode. And obviously the episode literally ends with Kristen breaking down in her, kitchen. The fact of the matter, she's got the faucet running because she doesn't want her daughters to hear her crying. But it's like, knowing, it's like no matter what the circumstances, because I think it's just one of those stories that I think it makes you want to hold your own kids a little tighter, and it's like, that sucks, because I don't think even Kristen expected things to kind of turn out that way. I mean, it's like, it's the thing of like, it's even more messed up because it's like, you can not understand like the circumstances. It's like, they were pushed to a corner, but it's still like, I wish you didn't do it. It leaves you with this like, I don't know, it leaves me feeling conflicted, and even me being conflicted on it might be kind of a bit of a bad thing, but it's just, like I said, it's just a sucky and shitty situation. But that's just kind of looking at it on its own. Like, the fact of the matter is, there is that opening where you see someone playing like that AR game, which obviously that ties into Kristen's kid side of the story. But the fact of the matter is like that could, because it seems like that's something they set up in this episode that they never really 100% dealt with. So that might be something we see kind of circle back around, especially in connection to this case. Maybe, I don't know. Because the fact of the matter is, I mean, let's talk about the story of like, their grandmother gave them that AR thing, and they're shared, like there's only two pairs. There's only two pairs, and like obviously there's four of Kristen's kids, so they kind of share it. But at first they're like, "Ooh, let's play a spooky game." It's like, oh, it's a little scary and stuff like that. But then things start getting a little sinister, especially it's like, oh, like because it's meant to be for like 17 years or older. And then the fact of the matter is, there's some like graphic stuff. I was like, oh, here's a guy with a butcher knife or whatever, or machete or whatever, slicing off some dude's head or whatever and carrying it. So there's that. But then like the youngest puts it on and starts seeing some like super creepy stuff, and then that guy following them and everything. And I just kind of a little bit of levity, just to because I'm like, oh, that's kind of a shitty kid thing to do. It's like, oh, before their mom got home, like, because obviously the youngest, she was freaking out because it was so real to her, like the monster's on top of her slicing at her, so she's freaking out. I mean, it's super messed up considering the fact that she had a nightmare somewhat similar to that in a certain regard. So there's that angle to it, but there's also the aspect of like when Kristen put it on, they had switched the game to the bunny game. I was like, oh, that's such a shitty little kid thing to do, because they don't want to get caught doing the fact is, I'm like, oh, we were doing something we weren't supposed to. And even the youngest was like, yeah, I'm not scared anymore, because none of them want to get in trouble for it. So I just thought that was just, I say shitty, but at the same time, it's kind of adorable that they did that. So all Kristen saw was just like the bunnies and everything. So it's like, oh, okay. So it's like, oh, why was your sister freaking out? It's like, I don't know. So that kind of went on. But there was that moment too where the youngest, she picks up the goggles or the AR things, and then she sees she puts them on and sees that thing again, which is like, for one, they switched programs, so she shouldn't be seeing that. So I think that in itself, like the first sign of like, yo, something's up with this situation of like, there might be something like demonic. Well, because we know like demons or whatever, like obviously we ran through the different possessions, can possess things and objects. So, but nevertheless, then like the oldest pair, they end up getting the game again. It's like, oh, we learned how to play it a little bit more. So they're fighting any monsters they see. But then there's, oh, wait, someone wants to join our game. It's someone named Rose. They do. And it's almost like some shining level, creepy little girl. And even at one point when they get close to her, like part of her face kind of morphs for a second and then it shifts back. It's like, all right, okay, it's like some serious spooky stuff. They go over to a Ouija board. I'm like, yeah, this super isn't good. And they're basically doing an incantation saying, hell, here he comes, or something like that over and over again. I actually skipped over it. It's a little bit of a levity to the episode too, is their introduction to Ben. And even Ben being like, you do know that when you all talk at once, no one can understand you. And it's also like, yeah, I'm a friend of your mom, so don't think it's creepy when you walk in here and there's some guy you don't know that's in here. And I even love that he was asking them their name, and one of the girls their name, and then like all four of them spoke at once. It's like, yeah, I love that is a thing of yours. That's just kind of like a character trait for them, is the fact is that they kind of keep talking all at once. It's kind of adorable. But obviously Ben ends up hearing them, and he's like, whoa, what are you guys doing? And he comes, because obviously there was like a skeleton creature or whatever rising up. Well, it was also interesting, if you notice, when Ben looked through it, he only saw the creature. He didn't see Rose in the corner. So I think that kind of speaks volumes. And the fact of the matter is, it's like, oh, this demonic looking creature, which I'm like, is that actually them? Well, because there was a whole thing of like the 60 and stuff like that keeps getting referenced. So it's like, was that one of them? But they're always kind of, well, because it might be a thing of like some of them are here on Earth, but not all of them are, or maybe they need a bridgeway to completely cross over. Maybe some of them are kind of creeping through in a sense of like a vision or whatever, but obviously they need a full welcome, and maybe this was supposed to be some set up to be like a game or whatever, but in actuality it's about summoning one of them. I don't know how, that's where my mindset is on it, but nevertheless, Ben ends up kind of taking the game from him and like, yo, this is something you shouldn't be playing. They're like, yeah, we were done playing anyway. So like, and obviously when their mom comes, it's like, oh, the eldest ends up telling them Kristen the truth, which, to be fair, it's something even Kristen talks about later on. It's like the only reason she told was because she knew you knew that maybe there was a chance that you were going to tell me anyway. So now it turns into this whole thing of like, yeah, like, I'll put some parental controls on it, but then Rose is like, who are you? And he's trying to put on the parental controls. She's like, no, you're not going to be able to do that. Like, he was even asking who she was, and she's like, that's none of your business. I was like, okay. And even he could, like, obviously, like, the menu kept disappearing. So it's kind of a thing of like, yeah, and it got a little staticky. So it's like, okay, so it's like, is it demonic possession or what with that? Because obviously we never, and the point I was making is the fact is we never tied this into everything with Eric, but at the beginning we did see someone putting it on saying that there was 17 and everything. I thought that would be like more directly a part of the episode, which technically to a certain extent it was, but it almost seemed like another aspect to an episode. It almost seemed like a separate thing, but I think that's going to be a correlation that we might kind of start making in the future of like, okay, this AR game that might be literally next in the next case or whatever. So we might start seeing like one or more incidents connected to that. I don't know. We'll kind of have to wait and see. But the fact is, Rose pops up again and starts talking about the fact is of like, oh, don't you want to know where your dad is? And they're like, wait, what? They do the border and it's like, oh, heaven. And it's like, wait, what? It's like, yeah, you're going basically referring to them as potentially being orphans and stuff like that. And it's like they bring it up to their mom, and their mom's like, I text your dad every day, he's fine, here, let's send him a video, which I can't help but think like, oh, that's a little ominous. I mean, obviously that's something that kind of gets constantly thrown in Kristen's face too, the whole husband situation, because it's like, oh, because obviously there's everything with David, like there might be something there when maybe there is, there's a little, you definitely see a little bit of the flirtation, like there's a bond there being created, but regardless. And now it's like it's kind of being thrown in her kid's face of being like, oh, are you sure your dad's okay? Obviously, this is something the oldest two are dealing with and not the youngest, because if all of them were dealing with, I think that'd be kind of just too much. But so that's why I'm like, this is like there's no silver lining to this episode. Like I said, like last episode had like, oh, maybe there's a silver lining. Oh, and that silver lining was immediately thwarted. And so now it's a thing of like, this is just like a downer episode, which is great because like in the sense of like the fact of the matter is, like, once again, I bring it up. I'm surprised a show dark like this is on CBS, which isn't to say CBS doesn't have shows where it tackles like some dark stuff, but at the same time, it just seems like this level of dark is kind of like I said, some borderline exorcism stuff. But I mean, hell, even The Exorcist was a TV show on even Fox. So it's something I wouldn't have expected on CBS. It's kind of like a major network, like maybe like a streaming service type of thing, maybe like a Netflix, a Hulu, maybe an Amazon, but still, regardless. I am very, very interested to see where ultimately all this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. Which is also the question, of like, obviously we didn't in this episode get to see how they really reacted to everything that went down, especially at the tail end of last episode of like, oh, we had a victory. And then it all kind of come crashing down at the very, very end. Obviously, we didn't get the reaction at the end of the episode, but, we didn't get it in this episode too. Maybe this one's probably going to be something that definitely carries forward because not only just the storyline of like, there's still stuff left open, but, with the AR stuff, but also the fact is there's the whole thing of like the circumstances that went down in this episode of like you felt like you were taking, there was no victory to begin with. It's not like that last episode where it's like, oh, there was a victory but it was kind of taken from you. There's just no win, because even in this case of like, oh, like, we were about to start the exorcism, they never got the chance to do it because the parents killed the kid. It's a lot. And then there's a whole aspect of Kristen and everything being a parent, like, that how hard this is going to hit her. So, like, I'm curious to see ultimately where this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode, like what kind of gets carried over and whatnot. Like I said, I think that plot thread is going to be something they circle into next episode, but maybe not. Maybe that's something that's going to be a little bit later on down the road. It's actually kind of interesting because we didn't see, God, I'm blanking on his name right now. Michael Emerson's character. We didn't see him pop up at all this episode, which I thought was kind of interesting. I almost halfway expected to see something when David started praying, like maybe we'd see him kind of messing with him a little bit at the tail end of the episode. I was thinking maybe it'd be a situation. Well, I guess that's to be fair. Like that's our reaction. The fact of the matter is seeing, David praying, being like, forgive Eric for what he's done, and obviously Kristen's reaction the way she is, but I'm still curious to see that carry over into like main plot wise and stuff like that, storyline wise. And then But I also kind of expected maybe we'd see Eric pop up there or something in some like ghost form or something, or haunting him. I mean, maybe that'd be something we see where his, like, you know, David has to struggle going forward, because maybe it's not Michael Emerson's character, maybe it's Eric there. Eric's the form that whatever it is takes to mess with his head. Oh, like I said, we'll ultimately have to wait and see. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and good